Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today, let's talk about how to work through the boring and lengthy middle part of a project. When the initial excitement has worn off, but you still can't see the finish line, how do you keep yourself going? This is the last video in a three-part series on how to finally complete the projects you've been thinking about but putting off. In the first video, we talked about what it takes to get past the resistance to start something new. In the second video, we talked about getting through the finish line. I saved this topic for last because the ideas from the first two videos can also be applied to the middle of the project. When we are in the middle of a lengthy project, several factors conspire to sap our motivation and keep us from doing the things we need to do. So let's look at a few of those factors and then talk about some strategies to overcome these challenges. The first set of factors are boredom and monotony. By now, you are far from where you started, but not yet close enough to the end. You've lost some of that initial excitement and motivation, but you can't yet see that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, so you don't get the boost from knowing that you're close to the end. Sometimes you're not even sure if you're closer to one end or the other. When will you reach the tipping point where your results start to show? Are you even getting close, or are you just treading water? And that leads us to the next factor you have to deal with: overwhelm. If you're looking at the middle 80% as a giant glob of things you have to do, or if you don't have a sense of whether or not you're making progress, that can feel pretty overwhelming. And that sense of overwhelm comes with a hefty dose of procrastination and a lack of clarity around what you need to do next. Another common factor is burnout. Let's say you went all in the beginning, you were hyper motivated. You stayed up late, you consumed a ton of content related to your project, you spent every free moment on this project and burned yourself out. But a project that takes time has to be treated as a marathon, not a sprint. You have to manage your energy, set realistic expectations, and create a sustainable pace that allows you to stay consistent. And the final factor I want to mention is distraction. In the last video, I talked about how we let distractions creep up as our projects progress. Maybe you let other stuff take up the time and energy you had previously dedicated to this project. Or maybe you are constantly on the lookout for the next big thing. If this is what is affecting you, please go back and watch the video on how to finish your project to learn to reprioritize this project and deal with your shiny object syndrome. Now that we've quickly looked at the factors that can derail you in the middle of a project, let's look at some strategies to overcome them. Number one, create milestones and use micro deadlines. If the middle of your project feels like this non-ending drudgery, that tells me that you have not set enough milestones for yourself. Instead of working in contemplation of your ultimate goal, which is still so far away, give yourself some checkpoints along the way. You can treat each of these milestones as a mini project with a start and an end. You can also give yourself a deadline for each milestone to keep you from stalling. Go back to the first video where I talk about breaking up a complex project into more manageable chunks. That advice applies here as well. Instead of aiming for a distant point on the horizon, give yourself mile markers so you can feel like you're working towards something attainable. Another thing that'll help you assess your progress is to track measurable data. Between milestones, you can keep yourself motivated by tracking meaningful data. If you're working on a book, that could mean tracking the number of words you're writing. If you're working on a fitness goal, you can track your body measurements. If you are learning a new skill, you can track the number of hours you spend practicing. A lot of the things we are aiming for require us to stay consistent and put in the work day after day before we can see the results. So if you're only using getting the final result as a measurement of your progress, you will have to go on blind faith for a long time. And that is a terrible motivator. But if you find a meaningful metric that can help you track your actions towards the big result, that'll give you a tangible way to see your progress. A fun way to take this to the next level is to gamify the process. Use some kind of a visual tracker for your progress. I did a recent video about using Kanban boards that I think you might like. So you can use a Kanban board, a tracking sheet, or some kind of a checklist to track your progress. Build a streak of consecutive days or weeks that you have been working on a project without breaking the chain. You can mark a calendar each day you make progress and aim to keep the streak going. If you use a digital tracker, you can even use sound effects and visual effects like fireworks. A digital tracker can even include a progress bar or some kind of a graph. You can even turn your project into a game with rewards and levels. Set up a point system for completing different tasks and milestones. Get creative and give yourself incentives to keep going. And that leads us to the next strategy. Reward yourself after each milestone. Plan a way to reward yourself after you complete a part of your project. Pick something specific and unique, something you don't do every day. Maybe you can plan to go see a new movie that's coming out soon, or you can try a new restaurant with a friend. Maybe you can plan a staycation. Plan something that'll bring you joy and break up the monotony. And when you reach your milestone, be sure to follow through with your reward. If you don't follow through with the reward, this strategy will stop working. Use a reward as a positive reinforcement for doing the work you set out to do. Creating a series of small wins will help you maintain your momentum. It'll give you a sense of constant progress, and it will make the overall project feel less daunting. The next and most important strategy is to pace yourself. If you think of your project as a marathon and not a sprint, it's probably not a good idea to use up all of your resources at once. You need a sustainable pace that helps you make consistent progress. And that means that you should plan to make a minimum of progress day after day and week after week. Deciding on the minimum you want to achieve is usually the easy part. The flip side is that you also don't want to overdo it on a particularly productive week. So in addition to having a minimum, you may want to set a maximum for yourself. For example, if you're making really good headway on your project and you feel like you could keep working on it all night, that's probably not a good idea. Doing this type of grand effort makes a lot of sense if you're at the end of the project. If you're close to the finish line, pulling an all-nighter can help you get done. And once you're done, you can rest and celebrate. But if you have this sudden burst of productivity in the middle of the project, burning the midnight oil will only get you so far. You will likely still have a lot of work ahead of you. And if you stay up all night, I guarantee that your project and other things will suffer. Your next day will be rough, and you will most likely break the chain of your continuous progress. You'll need a couple of days to recover, but once you break the chain of consistently working on your project, you may find yourself stalling for a while. And once you find yourself stalling, it will require a lot of effort to get back on track. So when you think about your capacity to work on this project, set realistic goals that you can achieve week after week. Don't set your goal based on a perfect week where everything goes as planned, you feel your best, you are highly motivated, and nothing random comes up. That is a very unlikely scenario. Instead, plan using an average week when you have an average amount of energy. Unexpected things come up, and you might get distracted. Give yourself some buffers and some breathing room. Plan on taking regular breaks. On an average, imperfect day, how much progress can you realistically make on this project? Set that as your goal. Remember that you want consistency over perfection. You want to make steady progress, not work in excessive bursts that have to be followed by days and weeks of rest. Pace yourself and keep going so you don't have to keep restarting. I hope this short video series will help you complete your projects and achieve the goals you've set for yourself. Whether you struggle with getting started, crossing the finish line, or working through the mushy middle of a project, you will find strategies that are applicable to your situation. So good luck with your projects. Remember to take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.